I'm your host, Kelly Morgan, indie author and indie publisher. Welcome to another episode of The Author's Mic. Welcome to today's episode. Hey everybody, Kelly here. Welcome to another episode of The Author's Mic. And you know it's Monday because I have a guest with me. And I'm so happy when I see people that I've met with in the past and they come back still writing, still being that author, still doing that thing. And Melinda, you are one of those people. We connected 5 years ago when you were writing your children's book. And then I'm not sure how many books you had then, but now 5 years later, here you are, here I am, right? We're still out here doing it. And I just want to hear all about, bring people up to speed with the type of author you are, what you got going on, how you even got here, and like what you are doing as an indie author to help promote yourself in your books. Welcome. It's a lot.
Well, thank you so much for having me again, Kelly. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we do have some history, don't we?
Mhm.
Last time we spoke, I was promoting my children's book. It was a middle grade chapter book called The Curious Casebook of Katie Q. Putt, which was a series of short mystery stories in the vein of Encyclopedia Brown, where we had a scrappy 10-year-old girl this time who used what she learned in school with STEM and STEAM principles to solve cases around her neighborhood. And it was a real fun book because it went one step beyond what Donald Sobol had done with Encyclopedia Brown, and it put some actual STEM and STEAM activities within the context of the book that kids could then go beyond the book and have experiences that most of them were self-guided, but sometimes it would require some interaction with a grown-up in the family or a teacher. But it all just made the learning so much fun. And that's when I write a kid's book, that's what I'm about. But we've gotten so much bigger since then, and I am here today to talk about how things have changed.
Well, let's talk about it because it sounds like even though back then you were an author,
Mm.
it sounds like you've stepped into what I would call full-blown authorpreneurship, right? And you've taken this to a whole nother level. So I'm excited for you, but tell us all about it and what that looks like and kind of you know where I'm going with this. So tell them what I mean when I say that.
Sure. So back in 2021, I was a solo indie author. Still am solo for that. I mean, it's the whenever I say we, it's the royal we, unless you count the dogs, which is goes part and parcel into what we developed as an LLC. I was formerly a sole proprietorship and sold my books that way, and I would attend functions all around the world, really. I actually went so far as to present on craft at the Japan Writers Conference multiple times. I also presented at various very large festivals on stage at the Orange County Children's Book Festival out in Costa Mesa, California. I presented on the stage at the Hawaiian Book and Music Festival. As a matter of fact, last year we just had a launch of our latest children's board book, Church de Surfin' Staffy, which is actually based on a real life surfing therapy dog. It's a great little book. And so we've done that. I have presented professionally at Killer Nashville. And so I was consistently growing as an indie author, but I was ready to take that next step. And so for me, that next step was actually forming an LLC, but it's actually a three division LLC. And one of the biggest things that we as writers, particularly as indie writers, seem to neglect to think about is that talent creates a draft, talent creates a book, but a system is what really creates a career. And most of us who get into this as indie writers or even as, standard traditional published writers, we get into this not because we want to write one book. It's
Mhm.
because we have so many voices in our heads screaming to get out that we want to do this for a living. We all want that great American novel. We want that cabin on the lake. We want to be able to write wherever, whenever we want. And if we want to order the venti at Starbucks with the extra cold foam and the chocolate sprinkles, we want to be able to do that without worrying whether it's going to break the bank. But having ideas isn't going to get us there. That's where the whole concept of the system came in. And so it really comes down to having a repeatable process. So a story becomes durable, ideas become durable when it moves through that structured system, not just when, oh, that was a good book. So
Yeah.
for us, the system is development phases, structural passes, intentional revision, rights protections, format thinking. Is this just a book? Is this destined to be just between the covers of a book? Or is this story bigger than that? Is this something that's going to translate possibly to the screen? And then there's, of course, asset positioning. How are you going to position that book? Are you positioning it just as a book, or are you positioning it as an IP that's going to have legs and take you further? And don't look at it the wrong way. Don't think that system is going to kill our voice as authors. It actually winds up protecting it. And so it stabilizes what went on up here and it makes it something that's operational, if that makes sense. So I built an actual pipeline inside my company so that every moves through structured stages. So I can keep going if you'd like, or if you have a question that you'd like to interject, we can do it that way too.
Well, I mean, you've said a lot, and I think you've touched on a lot of things that most authors, indie authors, don't think about. I mean, you're right. You think about, I've got this book, I'm going to publish it, and boom, I'm out there, and great. And then you think, okay, how am I going to market it? Well, okay, here's Facebook, or here's Instagram, or here's TikTok, or here's even YouTube, right?
Hmm.
And I'm going to go out there on my social media platform and I'm going to promote my book and hope that somebody purchases it, right? Hope that somebody watches this stellar post that I spent all day putting together, right? That yielded nothing. I
Hmm.
don't think anybody, not, I shouldn't say that. I don't think most of us think about having a real infrastructure, right? That will give us the ability to create something that has longevity, that has legs, as you said. And that takes time. That you got to build it, you got to have the operations, you got to be able to put the nuts and bolts together. It takes a lot of critical thinking to do
It
that,
does.
right? And so because most of us just don't think that way. You're thinking like a
We just want to write.
right. You're thinking like a business person because now you have to wear another hat. Yes, you've got your author hat, and that's great and fine. But if you want to keep that author hat, you got to put on that business hat, right? And
Indeed.
so I would love to hear how you've got these pipelines set up to feed one another. Because for somebody out there who has multiple books, or maybe a series, or
Hmm.
is maybe writing a series, this would be a great thing for them to hear because now they'll have a way to kind of keep the marketing going without burning themselves out.
Hmm. Well, then let's get right into it. So let's talk about the pipeline as infrastructure. All right. So within my company, I actually have three main divisions. I have WTP, Wagging Tails Press, Story Studio, and that is the development hub. That is where all story ideas start out, no matter what I think their end goal will be. And in that division, it goes through different stages of development. And because my company is dog themed, because my chief creative officer has four legs and a tail, um, I have given them all dog themed monikers. So when I have an initial idea, I call those my rough cuts, RUFF, my rough cuts. And those are those little ideas that we have that are scribbled on a napkin or on the back of, the electric, the water bill, or on the back of the receipt from the Starbucks that we probably shouldn't have bought. But those are where every story kind of germinates. And then it moves from, depending on if I feel the oomph behind that particular idea, it moves into something that I call the concept kennel. And from there, that's when things start getting fleshed out. It gets its log line, so I know the basic, idea of, okay, here's the story A to B in one succinct little sentence or two. I start jotting things down about the characters. I start jotting things down about the setting. And it goes all the way through, and there are multiple steps in this process. And it's actually you can see it on the Story Studio webpage, which is on the LLC webpage under Story Studios tab. So if anyone is interested, you can go there. It's Wagging Tales, TALES Press.com, and you'll see the Story Studio link. And if you're curious, go ahead, check it out. Might give you some ideas for how to set up your own little interior monitoring system. And so it's kind of like the Westminster Kennel Club, but instead of for dogs, it's for story. It goes through its paces.
Makes sense.
And it gets tested, it gets pressure applied, it gets structurally evaluated. And then what this does for us as a writer, as an author, is it removes all the emotional chaos from the process because you're following it in a very ordered timeline for each project that you have. And then from there, once it goes through its concept development and its structural passes, character arc alignment, series engine testing, if you know that this is something that's going to build out into a series, the series engine testing, what's going to carry this through an entire universe over a span of books. It then goes through what I like to call my internal viability scoring. And I've got a rubric for that. Is this a high concept? What is its marketability? Is this an original idea, or is this just a rehash of something that's just been done over and over again? And if it meets a certain threshold on our internal viability scoring, then it goes to one of the other two divisions. If I know that this is going to be just a book, or it's at least going to start its life as a book, then it's going to go, like, for instance, we've got Devil She Knows. All right. So this is a supernatural suspense thriller, and it went from Story Studio. It was developed as a book. It went through all of its paces, and it moved into Wagging Tales Press Publishing. And it has lived in publishing. It's doing fairly well out there. But I knew that that story had legs beyond just a book. So it came from Wagging Tales Press Publishing back into Story Studio, the development division, and was repackaged as a screen property. It's actually being developed. The pilot is already written as a limited series, as a prestige drama series. We did pitch deck creation, which is basically, think of it as a PowerPoint for your property. The treatment, the lookbook, the series architecture, rights documentation. Because if you're going to take any of your properties to Hollywood, one of the first things that can trip an author up is not being able to prove rights cleared property. Is to prove that you and you alone hold that copyright process, that you've registered with the Library of Congress, that you are the only person who wrote the book, that you don't have a co-author, or if you have a co-author, you have all your legal paperwork in order. And so, as an author, one of the things that you do is you should create a chain of title folder right off the bat as soon as you start a project, and keep development notes. Keep notes that you'd have every day on it. Keep a chart. Um,
You
Story
know,
Studio.
Linda, you make so many good points because when I'm out in the ether looking at different, author, whatever, people really aren't diving into the things that you're talking about. I mean, they're really not thinking along this lines. Even if you want to have your book turned into a screenplay, which I think is probably something that every author would love to see their words come to life, and really not knowing what that takes. And we could talk about this all day because I think it's fascinating. We just don't have the time. I think it's
Indeed.
great. It's so much that you don't think about as you're
Mhm.
writing your masterpiece. You're just thinking, I'm just going to put this out there and somebody's going to pick it up and read it and love it. And you're happy to get a review or a sale, but you've taken it to a whole nother level. So if people want to connect with you and follow you and look at all the things that you talked about, what's the web address?
So that web address again is Wagging Tales, Tales, press.com. And through that main LLC page, you'll see the links to each of our separate divisions. You'll see how it's set up.
That's cool. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go through my laundry list of stuff for you guys, as I always do. Number one, if you are an author and you're on your author journey, I have a free guide on my website. It's called So You Want to Write a Book? Go get it. It's free. Start your indie author journey. If you are interested in supporting me as an author, I have 2 books out there. One's an audiobook, that's Wait for It, and You Sound White. Both are available from me. I'll sign them, ship them, no charge. But you know what? Get them wherever good books are sold. No pressure. If you are thinking that you want to join our book club, we have one. It is the IRS, the Indie Reader Society. You can join us as a reader. We'd love to have you join us because my goal is to grow the book club as big as I can. Why, you say? Because we only support indie authors. So if you are into supporting indie authors, joining the book club is one way to do that. And if you're an author, guess what? You can pitch us as a book club because we don't know about your book unless you tell us. And lastly, y'all, I have launched the Trust Bridge series on my website. It is a curated directory that I have. It is an introduction service to help you bridge that gap between getting you to book clubs, podcasts, and bookstores. Go check it out. All the information is on the website. So, Melinda, back to you. You said so many things about a business, and I'm a business person. I LLC'd my company. I have, I'm in the process of building infrastructure and operations and all the unglamorous things about being an author, that now that I'm doing all this, I don't even have time to focus on being an author because I want to build my infrastructure. So when I do write that next great novel, I have this great infrastructure to run it through, right? And I don't think a lot of us think like that. But if you could tell somebody or help somebody, they're saying, okay, this sounds great, Melinda. I think I want to maybe start this journey that you're on. Like, I
Mhm.
want to build a company that's going to have longevity, and I want to write many books, and I want to, maybe have all these development things. And it sounds so great, but I have no idea how to get started, right? What direction would you tell us? Where would you have somebody start who just maybe just has their book and I have a website? How should I get started?
So, one of the first things that you need to decide as an author is, what is that ultimate goal? Is if you don't have a clear concept of where you want to be, then you're never going to know which route you need to take in order to get there. So you need to decide, do you want to, if you are a cozy mystery author, do you want to wind up having you want to be the next Aurora Tea Garden series on Hallmark. If that's your ultimate goal, well, then, okay, you need to step back and say, then I need to think, like, for instance, like you have to set up at something that, like what I've done, where I have multiple divisions. Now, granted, I'm a little bit of an oddball because I do have a screenwriting background. So it is a little easier for me to say, adapt one of my own pieces into a script. So you have to know that about yourself. If you don't have that background, if you want to retain more control, maybe you need to take some classes, learn how to screenwrite. If you are willing to hire a screenwriter, then you need to get involved with different society, legitimate societies that have people who are capable in that arena. Grow your network. Grow your network. That's crucial. I mean, we tend, as indie authors, we tend to fall back on social media to grow our email list so that when we do publish a book, we have people who are ready, willing, and able to read, which is great. But that can also, those can also be used as ways to grow your network. There are so many different organizations out there. International Screenwriters Association. There's tons of indies, your groups, for instance, for that are supporting indie writers. There's so much knowledge and experience in those groups, and you can't be afraid to, talk with people about those different things. So know what your ultimate goal is, build your infrastructure, build your connections and your network. And then here's the hardest part. Exercise patience with yourself. And that is probably one of the most difficult things for us as authors, as creatives to do, because we have crafted this world, this baby of our own, and we are just so excited to get it out there and share it with the world that sometimes we forget. You got to bring the diaper bag, you got to bring the bottle, you got to bring and so that's kind of what your business infrastructure is. It's your diaper bag that's going to help you raise that child of yours into the most healthy project that it can be. And you got to take the time to do it. 2021 was the last time you and I spoke. And yes, it's been about 5 years, but the honest truth is that it has only been since June of this past year of 2025 that I really locked down hard, stepped back from just about everything. I stopped doing appearances. I stopped doing churning out books at the rate that I was churning them out. I stopped doing festivals and things like that where I was selling books, and just took the time to actually build that sort of manifesto, that systems, standard operating, procedures, and codifying them. I actually have a binder that's one of those 5-inch binders that has standard operating procedures for the company so that I can, as I said at the top of the podcast, repeat the system. And so that hopefully, once I am in the position to be able to start bringing more people on board, I have a collegiate internship program, which has actually already been looked at by LSU, and their people have approved it to bring in some college interns for college credit to help with the social media aspect, get that younger generation who has their finger on the pulse of social media in there to, if they want to see how a small publishing, a boutique firm operates, and help get them raise the signal, if you will. So, but those standard operating procedures are now in place so that each semester, when I get a new group of kids in, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can kind of go, here, this is how we do things. I'm also happy to answer any questions they may have. That's part of what the internship program is designed for. However, it's something that have standardized the process. And sometimes as writers, we think like this, it's kind of like a bowl full of cooked spaghetti. And we kind of have to start thinking as a box of uncooked spaghetti, very linear, very focused, you know, and we can cook the spaghetti later. But once we have that all lined up, it takes so much of the grief out of the process and it starts to hum. And that is where I am right now in my process is now I am back to being able to write the books and it all flows. And it's a wonderful feeling, but I had to take that time. It was a 6-month process for me to be able to set all of this infrastructure up. And was it painful? Yeah, not gonna lie. But I am, excuse me, I am so absolutely thrilled that I took that time and did that.